Hemingway had a point. Supporting the opposition from the inside might seem like a good idea, but in the end, your enemy's enemy may not be your friend. Marine Le Pen, taking cash from the Russians, isn't going to work out well. Writing from the shell-shocked Hotel Florida on the edge of Barcelona, Hemingway wired reports to New York detailing the 4 nationalist columns attacking Madrid. Then he wrote a stage play about a 5th column. The 5th column was a dark body of nationalist sympathizers living inside Madrid, acting in support of Franco's fascists. Marine Le Pen must know how the play ends. Many of the 5th column traitors met a brutal end at the hands of the fascists and the Republicans. Is Russia trying to buy influence in European politics?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Putin is very close to Viktor Orban. They will close deals on energy and cheap gas and cheap oil. They have the same relationship with Tsipras, the new leader of Greece. The first meeting Tsipras had was met a Russian ambassador, so that's quite obvious. The Front National, they got grants from Russia.
There are several allegations speaking about Russia financing political parties, but at least we have a very strong evidence with Le Front National, who got 40 million euros from the first Russian bank, Czech Republic.
Marine Le Pen in public in a plenary session in Strasbourg answered my question on this financial model, and she said, so nobody else gave us money. We get from a Russian bank 40 million as a loan. It's completely okay. So from her point of view, good. From my point of view, it's really also very alerting that Russia obviously is financing right-wing anti-European movements.
After the Front National's surge in the European elections, even before the corpse of decency had time to go cold in Paris, a political war chest for Le Pen was agreed with the Moscow-based First Czech-Russian Bank. Bloomberg called it a small financial institution, 100% owned by a low-profile financier named Roman Popov. Popov previously worked for Stroitsungas, a major pipeline contractor for Russia's natural gas monopoly, Gazprom.
The situation is so desperate for Russia that they are looking all possible contacts, but I think that Front National is not a reliable partner.
How would Europe respond to Marine Le Pen backed by President Putin?
Well, if you put all the plagues of Egypt in one day, I don't believe that she will be elected. And if she would, this would be bad for France, but also for the European Union, for its cohesion. It would be the same if an ultra-right politician would be Bundeschancellor in Germany.
As the Front National celebrated the €9 million first instalment of a €40 million bank loan in December, Brussels faced calls to audit its own institutions for fear of a rising Russian 5th column.
You can hear some support and some understanding for the position of Putin and what he's doing in the two extreme, spectrums of this house, of this hemicycle. That's far right and far left.
There are sentiments in society and in some parties about immigration, about this and that, which Putin can fuel into that. He's doing that in Russia very successfully, talking about all the bad things that are taking place in Europe.
If Russia was democratic, I wouldn't see any kind of problem, but Europe believed quite a long time that Russia is on a European path or on a path of modernizing itself, and I'd say it's a delusion for everybody, that they turn back to the ancient times when imperialism as such or just enlarging the sphere of influence.
Putin is for the extreme right and the extreme left an example, because he is against gay people, and a lot of people in the extreme, especially extreme right, but also extreme left, see this as a problem. He is for family values, he says. He's for a clean country without a free press.
In a forceful bid to change the political narrative in Ukraine, Moscow has been strategically spending hundreds of millions of euros buying into European media. It even set up a new German-speaking channel to counter Berlin's message. Eastern European newspapers are under siege too. Some are being bought by pro-Russian investors. Others are being bombarded by a pro-Russian propaganda campaign using social media.
There is a propaganda war, of course, going on, and a disinformation war for a number of years already, but it really took pace after the annexation of Crimea.
I think it just simply revived old propaganda and political action tools that have always been in the cards, that have been actively used by the KGB for decades in the Cold War.
We can easily see today that some, probably like 20% of the parliament, are under a direct or indirect influence, at least expressing very much like Russian propaganda opinions, or sometimes quoting exactly from sentences made by Kremlin.
The worst that Europe can do is to try to devise a counter-propaganda from a centralized source. I mean, that would not go down very well with European voters in the first place, so that could actually be harmful.
We decided to step up the strategic communication and basically with three main aims. First, to step up the proactive communication about what we do, why we do it, what we stand for, and we do that in obviously all EU languages, but also in Russian, in Ukrainian. Secondly, it was agreed that we will correct any kind of misinformation or misinterpretation, because it's very important that the facts and figures are out there and that they are correct.
The funny part of the story is that, of course, Russian propaganda now primarily directs the extreme right groups, and they are also buying up small extreme right groups in the Baltics, but those are especially not the Russian language minorities in the Baltics. So they have, and I think they have already started to introduce a much more complicated propaganda game than before.
When you're talking about really small economies like Baltic states or Cyprus and similar, I think that they can be influenced, but this is where the whole European community has to really step in and ask for more transparency.
Le Pen's admiring eye for Vladimir Putin's nationalistic leadership is twinned with her fiery desire to pull apart the European project. And all Putin wants in return is to see Europe divided, weakened and begging for gas.
In June we will have to decide whether or not to prolong the sanctions. You need unanimity. And this new position of some of the countries could be a problem. And of course Putin is trying to achieve that. He is dividing even us within the European Union.
Can Putin realistically expect European policy in general to be shifted more in Russia's favor?
I'm almost sure that this is not the overall aim. As I say, partly it has the basic nuisance value. Which is always good, at least as a talking point in negotiations, in bilateral negotiations or in multilateral negotiations. The other is that compared to the investment, this nuisance value is very high. So actually it's a very cheap investment in European politics, if you want to put it that way.
The EU so far has been able to act with the unity. There's no reason why this wouldn't continue to be the case, because unity is our strength, and this goes when we are trying to push for the political solution through the concrete support for the implementation of the Minsk agreements, or when it comes to putting pressure on Russia through the restrictive measures.
We invited Ambassador Vladimir Chichov from the permanent mission of the Russian Federation to the European Union to discuss his government's influence in Europe. He was unavailable. The mission was also not able to provide a spokesperson. We invited a spokesperson from the Front National to discuss Russian influence in European politics. We received no response.
There is an ongoing investigation against one of the MEPs of being a Russian spy.
Okay, which one is that?
Unfortunately, he's Hungarian. His name is Baalen.
The surprise would not be that one MEP spied for Russia. The surprise would be if it was only one.
There were also comments about Jobbik being financed from Moscow. In recent months in Germany, 2 cases were investigated by the General Prosecutor's Office, which shows the problem. It's a very actual and a very important one.
If you were living in Madrid in 1939, you might have suspected your neighbour of working with the fascists. But by the time the fascists were at the gates, it was too late. Europe must avoid a childish suspicion of foreigners. The tactic used by Putin to close NGOs in Russia, we're bigger than that. Europe cannot close every avenue of possible Russian political funding. And why should we, if we really believe in freedom of expression?
It would be better economically for Russia to be a partner with Europe. So what does Russia actually gain from this disruption?
Oh, Russia, better said Putin, is a 19th century Tsar, thinking of land grab, that is important. But I've always said if Russia invests in its own economy, in foreign trade, in technology, etc., and a good agriculture, it will be extremely influential also concerning the neighboring countries. So they don't need to do what they're doing now.
First, it's anti-European, so it is deeply dividing. And second, it's somehow connected with anti-democratic attitude, anti-democratic and extremist political behavior, which is fundamentally contrary to the EU treaties and values.
What we should never accept is the hidden cost of a Russian fifth column. European politicians working to a Russian agenda because they need the cash. We have a war on our doorsteps and Russian planes in our skies, submarines in our estuaries and hackers on our servers. Don't be surprised, Marine Le Pen, if your enemy's enemy is not your friend.